The streets of the small town were still quiet in the early morning when an abandoned dog wandered slowly, like a shadow. His fur, once shiny and healthy, was now matted with dirt and mud. His tail drooped, and his weary legs barely held him up. He had once belonged to a family. He lived in a house filled with children's laughter, warm meals, and love. But those days were long gone. One morning, a large moving truck had stopped in front of the house. People were busy carrying boxes, furniture, and luggage back and forth. The dog watched silently from a corner, confused by the commotion. When everything was loaded, the family climbed into the car and drove away, leaving him behind. The door closed, and the car disappeared down the road. The dog ran after them at first, thinking it was a game, but he soon grew tired, his breath short. He stopped on the dusty road, his eyes fixed on the shrinking car. Perhaps they would come back. Perhaps they had forgotten him. But they never returned. Days turned into nights. The house stood empty. The toys in the yard, once a source of joy, were now abandoned and covered in dust. The dog waited by the door, sleeping on the porch at night. When it rained, he got soaked. When the sun shone, he lay on the warm ground. But nothing changed. Hunger gnawed at him, and even finding water was a challenge. One lonely night, when he could no longer bear the hunger and solitude, he quietly rose and walked toward the streets of the town. His first day on the streets was filled with disappointment. He wandered into the town's busiest street, where people rushed past him without a glance. When he smelled food, he followed the scent to a bakery. His hopes lifted, but the people inside noticed his dirty and frail appearance. They yelled at him to leave, and one man grabbed a stick and chased him away. The dog fled, his heart racing, and found refuge in a back alley. He stopped by a trash bin, using his nose to push the lid open and search for scraps. He found a half-eaten sandwich and began to devour it hungrily. But before he could finish, another stray dog appeared, growling and lunging at him. The fight lasted only a few seconds, but it was enough to drive him away, leaving the last crumbs of the sandwich behind. Night fell. A cold wind swept through the streets, and the sky was thick with clouds. Rain began to drizzle, and the dog sought shelter by curling up against the corner of a wall. He lay down, pulling his legs close to his body, trembling as he tried to sleep. In his dreams, he saw his old life, playing in the yard with the children, feeling his family's love. But the images faded, and darkness engulfed him again. When he woke up, a single tear rolled down his face. In the morning, the sun broke through the clouds weakly, casting a pale light over the town. Exhausted and starving, the dog rose to his feet and began to walk again. He reached the edge of a park and heard the laughter of children. For a moment, he stopped and watched them from a distance. Their joy reminded him of the life he had once known. But he didn't belong in that world anymore. Lowering his head, he turned to leave. But just then, a small boy noticed him. Holding a half-eaten sandwich, the boy slowly approached. The dog froze, uncertain, and stepped back cautiously. The boy knelt down, extending the food. "Don't be scared," the boy said softly. The dog looked into the boy's eyes. After a long moment of hesitation, he stepped forward and gently took the food. The boy smiled and reached out to stroke the dog's head. That touch awakened a feeling the dog had almost forgotten: love. In that moment, the dog realized he was not entirely alone. Even a single act of kindness could bring light to his darkness. This was not the end of his story, but perhaps the first step toward a new beginning. Life, it seemed, could change in the most unexpected ways.